And welcome to the Finance and Administrative Services meeting. On this committee today is myself, Gladys Blackmore. Councillor Bressie is online. Councillor Palat and Mayor Clayton are in chambers. And we will kick the meeting off with a service update from Chief Whiteway.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So just a few highlights from the service area. The appeal process is underway, so the city clerk is currently working on scheduling and getting letters out to provide complainants the dates that their appeals will be heard. So currently we're looking at hearings from July to early October. In the meantime, assessors will have ongoing discussions about the appeals with the tax agents. Any of the appeals that can be settled or withdrawn will be, and the remainder will be heard at hearing. In finance, the 2022 year end is all wrapped up and being presented today. So now the focus is shifting on 2023 in the first quarter financials. The budget advisors are also working at starting up our 2024 to 2027 budget preparation. So that will commence early next month. In procurement, they are preparing for spring bike auction, which begins actually here this week, April 28th. There's approximately 90 bikes that will be up for auction. And as well, they're continuing to do training with staff on our newly implemented ERP system. And that does complete my update for today. Thanks.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for Chief Whiteway? Seeing none around the table, we can move on to quarter 4 2022 financial report. Again, Chief Whiteway.
Thank you very much, Chair Blackmore. So with the quarter 4 financial report, there is 2 recommendations. First, that we receive the unaudited financial statements and supporting information for the year ending December 31st, 2022 for information. And the second is the committee recommended council approve the transfer of the 2022 operating surplus of $2,018,000 to the Municipal Police Service Reserve. So I'll briefly highlight a few items within the report. If you look at the appendix that's attached to your report, it will walk through our unaudited financial statements as well as other information. Looking at the statement of financial position, which is what presents the city's financial and non-financial assets and all liabilities that the city has outstanding. The resulting difference is accumulated surplus and indicates that the city has net resources available to provide future services. These consist of both cash and non-cash items. When we look at the net financial assets at December 31st, 2022, the city is in a net financial asset position of $138 million, indicating that the city has more than enough financial assets to repay financial liabilities and support future operations. We look at the statement of operations, which reports on the revenues, expenses, and results as of December 31st, 2022. It details the transactions impacting the city's accumulated surplus from the beginning of the year to the end of the reporting period. It differs from the city's annual operating budget as it does include non-cash items such as amortization and contributed tangible capital assets. As of December 31st, 2022, the city is in an operating surplus in our statement of operations of $15.6 million. This is a surplus. This surplus is increased by an unrealized gain on the city's interest rate swap of $2.4 million. When we look at our true operating variances from budget, operating variances are a result from differences between what was approved at budget and the actual financial results. Internal and external factors do influence operating variances and can include things like growth, operating efficiencies, economic conditions, availability of resources, weather conditions, and more. For the year ending December 31st, the city has realized a surplus from budget of $518,000 prior to recognizing unbudgeted general revenue from the finalized ICF agreement of $1.5 million. When recognized, this results in a net surplus at December 31st of just over $2 million, and this equates to 1.06% of the city's total operating budget. Finally, I'll highlight that reserves. Reserves are the restricted portion of the city's accumulated surplus, and all decisions made with regards to the city's reserves are approved by council in accordance with Policy 346. As of December 31st, 2022, the city has $102 million in reserves. So in conclusion, the city maintains a net financial asset position and accumulated surplus, indicating that there are sufficient resources available to support future services. City is also well within provincially prescribed debt and servicing limits as required by the MGA and maintains sufficient reserves to support fiscal prudency. Management has realized a surplus of $2,018,000 at year end, which represents 1.06% of the total operating budget. And administration is recommending the council approve the transfer of this surplus into the Municipal Police Service Reserve. Thank you.
We just lost everyone online. Oh, they're back. They're back. Okay, do we have any questions in regards to the fourth quarter statements? I see no hands being raised anywhere. So I would move to request someone make the motions to handle the business. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I would move that.
There's two motions.
Oh, sorry. I would move that receive the unaudited financial statements supporting information for the year ending December 31st, 2020 for information. That's the first motion, I believe.
You can probably put them together, I think.
And approve the transfer. I can't speak to the second one because I actually don't support it. So I'll just speak to the first one for now for that.
Okay.
Please.
So we have one motion on the floor. Is there any questions, concerns, or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I will call a question. And that carries unanimously. To move on to the second point of business, would someone like to make the motion, in one direction or another? Mayor Clayton?
Sure, I'm happy to make the motion to be able to have discussion and debate. The motion in the package reads to move to approve the transfer of the 2022 operating surplus of $2,018,000 to the Municipal Police Service Reserve.
That motion is in order, and I would look for debate on the motion. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Clayton. Mike, I guess my question for administration is why we're choosing Municipal Police Service Review. I think of all the years that we've had surpluses, it's always went back into the Financial Stabilization Reserve. I'm just curious why we're not putting it in there.
Chief Whiteway.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So Financial Stabilization Reserve is one option that we've previously presented and council's approved for allocation of the operating surplus. There's been many other items that we've used the year-end operating surplus to cover. For an example, that helped us with putting away funds to cover our CMP retro. It has helped to fund Council Strategic Initiatives Fund. So there's been other options that we've presented and recommended to Council besides the Financial Stabilization Reserve.
And just one more follow-up. Can you just remind me on the Financial Municipal Police Service Reserve, are we receiving interest income on that fund?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, correct. And any interest received on the funds in that reserve will be reallocated and held within that reserve for spending.
Okay. I guess for me, maybe I'm just being a traditionalist. I'd rather this go back to financial stabilization in a few years if we need it for the police review, which we probably will. Fine. I really don't like putting the money there now. We've got a fair large bucket of money sitting in that account that we're going to be using over the next few years as we transition. We knew we were short going into that, and I think it's better and more transparent later on as we need the money to transfer it across then to just front load it now. So my preference is that we put it in our traditional way to the Financial Stabilization Reserve.
Okay. Mayor Clayton. That motion is in order. I'll call a question.
Sorry.
And that carries, so we are in camera. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Thanks.
And welcome back to the Financial Administrative Services meeting following that brief in camera. We do have a motion on the floor. The motion is that the committee recommend council approve a transfer of the 2022 operating surplus of $2,018,000 to the Municipal Police Service Reserve. Do we have any further discussion on that motion? I see no one raising their hand and no one online, so I will call the question. And that motion is defeated 3-1.
Sorry. Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
You sure?
Yeah, just misdescribed. I voted correctly.
Okay. Do we have another motion? Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I would move that we approve the transfer of the 2022 operating surplus of $2,018,000 to the Financial Stabilization Reserve.
Do we have any discussion on that? And that motion carries. So we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the audited consolidated financial statements. We'll get Chief Whiteway to introduce this, and then I believe we will go in camera for some further discussion.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So I do just have a brief presentation to walk us through this year's year-end audited financial statements. So I'll just start out that today's recommendation is that committee recommend council approve the audited consolidated financial statements of the City of Grande Prairie for the year ended December 31st, 2022. And just to speak a little bit in introduction, these statements are consolidated, meaning that they are the city as well as the airport and the library. The statements are prepared under public sector accounting standards. I'll briefly walk through the statements after our auditor walks through the independent audit report. So I will pass it over to Devin to start.
Welcome, Devin. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Danielle. Appreciate the opportunity to sit with you guys. So just quickly, Fletcher Mudrick LLP, I'm a partner there, and I have the pleasure of doing the audit of the City of Grande Prairie and have for a few years now. The differentiator of an audit, there's a differentiation for an independent auditor, of course. It's in the title to be independent from the city and from management, and so our role is differentiated in that the statements are the city's, the financial processes are the city's, and we come in and we look at those processes in order to give have changed, what processes have changed, and what the city's doing differently now with the new system. We then do procedures to reduce the risk of material misstatement in those areas, to ascertain that there aren't material misstatements, and then we do further procedures to look for any risks that we may not have previously identified. And then when we're done with that, we provide the auditor's report.
The auditor's report is apparently quite flighty today.
Yes, it's not working well. I'll continue anyways. So I'll reference some pages within your agenda package that may help to follow through. But I first wanted to go through the statement of financial position. So it's page 3 of the financial statements or page 29 of your agenda package. This is really the city's financial and non-financial assets, as well as all liabilities. The net result is $889 million of net assets at the end of 2022. So financial assets consist of those assets that are more easily transferable to cash. So that'd be your bank balances, your investment portfolio, our accounts receivable, our short-term assets that are available for sale, and our investment in Aquaterra. So after that, we go and we present the financial liabilities, which include all liabilities of the city. So that's our accounts payable and accruals, deferred revenue, employee benefit obligations, and long-term debt. Finally, there's the non-financial assets, which include those assets that are not as easily transferable to cash. It's inventory, prepaid expenses, and tangible capital assets. Overall, the city's financial assets exceed their liabilities, indicating that there's sufficient ability to repay all outstanding liabilities. Additionally, the city is in a net asset position at year end, and simply put, this is the residual amount remaining between all assets and liabilities. The statement of financial activities is page 4 or page 30 of your agenda package. Statement of financial activities is comparable to an income statement or a statement of profit and loss. So this is a government's version of those statements. It discloses all of the revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year. The city's revenues consist of taxation, government grants, user fees, and sales of goods, interest, investment income, and more. For 2022, total revenues were $185 million. Expenditures for the same period totaled $217 million. This is for salaries and benefits, contracted and general services, materials, goods, and utilities, repairs and maintenance, transfers to local boards and agencies, interest, amortization, and more. Further details and alternate presentation are included in the set of financial statements on pages 14 and 15. These are Schedules 5 and Schedule 6. Other items include revenues associated with the value of contributed assets that the city receives, any gain or loss on a sale of assets or assets that we hold for sale, as well as government transfers and results of our subsidiary operations, which is Aquaterra. So for 2022, these items totaled $47 million. The year-end result for our consolidated statement of operations was an excess of revenue over expenditures of $16 million. There are numerous other statements included after the statement of operations. I'll just briefly touch on each of them. The remeasurement gains and losses, we have a gain on our swap. So essentially, this is an unrealized gain as a result of marking that debt to the current market rate. We have 2 loans that were swap loans. Those are the Downtown Phase 4, as well as the loan for the Coordinated Care Campus. This gain is a result of interest rates being higher now than they were at the time that these loans were taken. Next, we have a statement that walks through our accumulated surplus. As I previously noted, the accumulated surplus at December 31st is $889 million. This is further detailed in Schedule 1, which is on page 10 of the statements, and it is made up of restricted surplus, so the money that we hold in reserves, equity in our investments, and equity in our assets. The unrestricted portion is predominantly what is remaining to be spent on capital projects that have been funded from capital tax but have not yet been started. Net financial assets is the next statement that you'll see.
Sorry, Ms. White, I just wanted to interrupt for one quick second. Council, I know our e-scribe is struggling loading this document. Ms. Van Bleekveld has sent it to your emails. So if you want to check your emails, you can see, well, it is for me. So check on your phone. So it could be a tablet issue. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate it, Mayor Clayton. If I'll just bear with me one moment, I'm going to try my PowerPoint again as well. Okay. So I'll just resume with the changes in net financial assets. Is that all right? Sorry, bear with me one moment. It'd be page 7 of the financial statements. Okay, so the net financial assets, this statement that details the changes and how we derive the end balance of $140 million in net financial assets. As presented on the first statement that I reviewed, it is the difference between the city's financial assets and liability. This statement demonstrates how the year-end excess of revenue and expenditures reconciles back to an increase of just over $1 million in net assets from this time last year. Finally, on page 8, you have your statement of changes in financial position. So non-government financials would refer to this as a statement of cash flow, and it summarizes the inflows and outflows relating to operating, investing, financing, and capital. Lastly, I'll just touch on these schedules that are included. I'm not going to go through each one, but there are numerous that are included in our financial statements. There's a schedule for accumulated surplus, our tangible capital assets, our property and other taxes, our government transfers, a different presentation of expenditures, and the various segments that we present in. Each of these do provide more detailed information on the associated line items and are referenced back throughout the statements. Finally, we have the financial statement note disclosures. These play an integral part to any organization's financial statements. Again, not something that I'll go through. They do commence on page 42 of your agenda package, or they commence on page 16 of the financial statements. So like I said, I'm just going to highlight that they explain the significant accounting policies of the city, detail any significant balances, transactions, and information of value to readers. They provide greater context and details to the transactions and are always referenced back to their corresponding line items. They'll be presented in the order of the statements and should always be read in conjunction. To conclude, I just wanted to again remind that the auditors have provided the city with an unqualified opinion. So this means that the audited financial statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city at December 31st, 2022. 2022 has seen an increase in the net financial assets for the city, indicating a healthy position to be able to repay financial liabilities and support any future operations. Diversified and responsible borrowing for 2 large projects, as well as excess funds for yet to be started capital projects, have contributed to the reported excess of revenue over expenditures. This also demonstrates management's continued commitment to stay within council budget. The positive accumulated surplus is another healthy financial indicator for the city, with residual demonstrating that we have more operational assets than liabilities, generally indicating we have cash flow to meet ongoing obligations, as well as assets to rely upon during more leaner periods when our costs going out are greater than our revenues coming in. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions or concerns? I see no one raising their hands. I believe you want to go in camera now. So I would ask for a motion to go in camera. Mayor Clayton makes that motion.
So moved.
Call a question. And that carries.
Chelsea, you can stay.
ready to go back to our regular and welcome back to the Financial Services Administration and Services meeting. Today, we have a few items to clear off for agenda item 3.3, and I will ask Councillor Plott to look after that business.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I would move that committee recommend council approve the audited consolidated financial statements of the City of Grande Prairie for the year ending December 31st, 2022.
That motion is in order. Do we have any comments, questions, or debate? I see no one online raising their hands and no one in council chambers raising your hand, so I will call the question. And that motion carries. I will move on to item 3.4, which is Bylaw C1459, and I would ask Chief Whiteway to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So the recommendation today is that committee recommend council give 3 readings to Special Recreational Services Tax Bylaw C-1459. And I'll just briefly speak to this. The operation of the fountain and water features at Pinnacle Ridge has been funded through the special tax bylaw for the past 12 years. The annual operating budget for this feature was reduced in 2022 to bring the collected fees more in line with the typical operating costs. There is a reserve available, and based on actual expenses over a period monitor of 2018 to 2021, administration recommends retaining the operating budget of $8,350, which can be fully funded by reapproving the $12.50 special tax for the 668 homes in the identified district. A special tax levy is the appropriate source of funding for the operation and maintenance of a water feature in Pinnacle Ridge, as it supports the desire of community residents to have specific neighborhood enhancements. And it is recommended that committee recommend council give 3 readings to this bylaw. Thank you.
I would ask if there's any questions from council. I see no. Oh, Mayor Clayton. Oh, go ahead and make the motion. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I would move the committee recommend council give 3 readings to Bylaw C-1459, being the Special Recreation Services Tax Bylaw.
Is there any debate on the motion? I see no hands going up, so I will call a question. Are we missing someone? Councillor Plott. And that motion does carry. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is property tax bylaw. Again, I would ask Chief Whiteway for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So the recommendation today is that the committee recommend council give 3 readings to property tax bylaw C-1460. On November 28th, 2022, Council approved the 2023 operating and capital budgets. This included a proposed increase of 1.71% for the 2023 average tax amount. The residential assessment base has stayed consistent with 2022 due to the new assessments that were produced to reflect July 1st, 2022 market valuation. The residential tax rate will increase to offset the municipal tax increase. With the commercial tax base, it's been reduced by approximately 1% from new assessments that were produced to reflect a July 1st, 2022 market valuation. The non-residential tax rate will have to increase to offset the loss in market assessment and the increase in the municipal tax required. Also included here, the 2023 education tax levy is decreasing from 31.1 million to 30 million. This is approximately 3.5%. The 2023 Grand Spirit requisition is increasing from 496,500 to 561,600, which is an increase of approximately 13.1%. Just a bit in conclusion, municipalities depend on property tax to provide services and amenities to its residents. Bylaw C-1460 sets the tax rates for each assessment class, and it's attached to your report. 3 readings are required in order to implement the proposed bylaw. Property tax notices will be mailed mid to late May with payment due by June 30th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Chief Whiteway. Do we have any questions or concerns of administration at this time? I see Councillor Bressie has his hand up, so go ahead, Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to understand the 2023 education tax levy dropping. I'm assuming that the rates can go, that the province isn't collecting less, that there just something went on where our equalized assessment decreased compared to the province, or didn't increase the rate of the province. Is my assumption there correct?
Chief Whiteway.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. I'll defer that question to Scott Smith. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, if I may. Essentially what's happened is market values across the rest of the province have increased, so Grande Prairie has a smaller piece of the education pie, essentially. So places like Calgary and Edmonton, where market values are increasing, they're paying more in education tax, so we're offsetted by paying less.
Great, thank you.
Is that all your questions? Great, thank you. Councillor Wash.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. I just have a quick question about the 13.1% increase for Grand Spirit. Can you just speak to that?
Essentially what happens, Chair Blackmore, is we received a requisition from Grande Prairie, and that's the amount that we have to levy. So that is split based on equalized assessment through the municipalities that Grande Prairie covers. So it would be the county, and I believe Saddle Hills and places like that, as well as us. So they're just essentially they're requesting more funding.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Thiessen, we received a report itemizing that not too long ago, yeah. Is there no other questions? Then I would perhaps ask for someone to look after business. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I would make a motion that the Financial Administrative Services Committee recommend Council give 3 readings to the property tax bylaw C-1460.
That motion is in order. Is there any debate? Seeing none, I'll call a question. And that motion does pass unanimously, and we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is Bylaw C-1459, Special Recreational Services Tax Levy. Sorry, we just did that. Yeah, there we go. So the next item is the budgeted expenditures per capita report that was requested by Council just a couple of weeks ago. And I'd ask Chief Whiteway to introduce that.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So the recommendation for this one is just the committee accept this for information today. I'll respectfully assume you've all reviewed the report and just highlight a few items. So a table was presented within the report that does demonstrate the city as well as other comparable municipalities' budgeted expenditures per capita. In 2022, for the city of Grande Prairie, this was $2,909 compared to the highest, which is just over $4,000, and the average, which is around $2,865. So as you can see, each municipality does show overall increases when you look at 2018 to 2022. Ours increased by 23.95%, below the average increase of around 28%. So budgeted expenditures per capita will differ between municipalities. It can be due to a large range of factors, includes weather, types and age of infrastructure, municipalities' location, proximity to larger centers, and more. Municipalities in the province that experience Chinooks, for example, may not require as much snow clearing rounds or sand and salt requirements. Municipalities located near larger centers such as Edmonton and Calgary often benefit from the services that those larger centers provide, as well as can partner in some services to reduce their costs. Additionally, municipalities can vary on their infrastructure standards, ages, so those with newer assets may not require the same level of maintenance or repair costs. One final example is that other municipalities have moved certain things like a storm system to a utility model rather than paying through tax-supported operations. Administration continues to work responsibly to review costs and expenditures throughout the year, culminating in the annual budget process. Despite facing numerous challenges relating to location, labor market, and distance from other urban centers, the City of Grande Prairie has remained diligent in controlling expenditures and maintains relatively average budgeted expenditures per capita compared with other municipalities in the province. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Whiteway. I see two hands up in chambers. I'm going to go to Councillor Palat first, then Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Blackmore. I was just going to make the motion that committee receive this report for information. I'm not sure if there's any more conversation, but I was just going to make that.
Okay. I'll accept the motion and call for discussion or debate. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks. Really appreciate this report. I know that prior council and this council have been very diligent in being able to improve services that are offered to our community while keeping taxes in line, as we've and the rest of the country and the rest of the world have experienced significant inflation. It goes to show the work that administration and council have done in choosing priorities that are valuable to our community while still keeping the expenditures at bay. I think that showing that we are below the provincial average just is a good testament to the significant work that was done last term by council and administration and continues to be a priority on this term. We, as elected officials, hear on a regular basis about cost of living and property tax, etc. And when you compare apples to apples, Grande Prairie continues to be not only a great place to live, but an affordable place to live. So thank you for this information. I think it's extremely valuable. Thanks.
And Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Blackmore. And just to back that up, I always give this this chart a lot of weight. Again, out in the public, we hear about the tax rate percentage, and that's based on your home value. And because we are one of the more affordable places to live, that percentage goes higher. Likewise, as house values rise, that percentage drops. So it's kind of like a tide, where this chart shows that we're spending $2,909 per capita is right on par with what the rest of the province is spending. And so therefore, we're bringing in a proportional amount, we're spending a proportional amount, so we're not out of line with the rest of the province. And so I always give this chart a lot of weight just to guide me in my decisions. So thanks for this report.
And I see Councillor Bressy's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate the information. I think I'll echo what's been said, but also I'll point out that keeping below average in growth is impressive to me, and kudos to administration and council for being able to do that, because over those last 5 years, we've also added significant services. Back in 2017, just before this started, we didn't have an outdoor pool going. I don't think we had our turf fields and our bleachers going at CKC campus. We certainly didn't have a mobile outreach program and a public security unit, and I can list other services too. So it's impressive to see that we're able to keep those costs down, and we're not doing it by gutting services. We're actually doing it while adding services.
Thank you, Councillor Bressy. If there's no further comments, discussion, or debate, I will call a question. And that carries. We can move on our agenda right down to the outstanding items list, as there's nothing further. So I would ask Chief Whiteway to comment on the outstanding items list.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So everything is on track, and the item 1263 per capita spending comparison can now be removed.
And I'll ask for a motion to accept this as amended. Mayor Clayton?
So moved.
And call a question.
Councillor Bressie?
Bressie in favor.
So Councillor Bressy's in favor. That carries. And this meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene in about 3 minutes, probably.
Can we just have a little bit longer than that? I will be joining virtually for the next two.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break.
Perfect. Thank you for that.